Hi there, Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. Today we are going to do a pastoral scene for Sketchbook Sunday. It's a very easy sketch here, and it's kind of in the same process I would do if I was outdoor sketching. I'm going to start by just some very quick gestural lines for the barn and little outbuildings there, and I'm basically just mapping out where I'm going to paint. This is going to be done in watercolor, so I just want to get a few lines for the architecture since I don't really want to freehand architecture. I have some dark trees behind these buildings, so I want to make sure that I don't paint over them. So I've got a barn, I'm working on some winding fences here, and I've got a couple cows in the pasture, so I'm just very loosely sketching these in with pencil. I'm using a normal mechanical pencil for this, nothing fancy. I don't worry too much about smudging pencil lines or anything like that. I just like to have a smooth writing mechanical pencil to work with. I think these are Bics. I can't remember. I got them at Walmart, I think, so they're certainly nothing fancy. So I'm just sketching in a little kind of mountain range and tree line here, and just throwing a few little indications for some taller tree branches. And then I just erased any lines I didn't need and brushed off the crumbs. And now I'm wetting the sky, and the paper I'm working on is a watercolor paper, but it's kind of on the thin side, so I wanted to clip it down there with a binder clip to make sure it doesn't warp on me. And I'm wetting the sky down to just above the barn there, just so I kind of have a wet into wet background so it wants to fade away. I'm using a mixture of ultramarine blue and burnt sienna for a just slightly dulled blue sky, and I'm just kind of blotting off some cloudy areas. And I'm also going to wet to the foreground here and get that grass in. So while the top of the paper is drying, I can work on the bottom of the paper, and since there's a dry gap in between, I don't have to worry about them mixing. I've got some green gold and some sap green going on there, and I just basically want to have a nice bright sunlit pasture. Oh, and today actually is July 1st, so it marks the start of World Watercolor Month, and I do believe today's prompt is sunny days, and so we've got a nice sunny day going on here. Now I didn't mask anything, and I've got this split rail fence here, so I'm just kind of dabbing in between the rails on the fence just to give it that indication of like a split rail fence. I'm not going to get fussy with anything here. I put a little hooker's green there in the shadow area under the fence, and then I'm just carrying on some of that color behind the fence underneath the tree line, just to kind of pull a little continuity there, because it would be the same grass on either side of the fence. The grass is not greener on the other side of the fence, it's the same grass on the other side of the fence, just like in real life, I guess. The sky is still a little bit damp at this point, but I think that it's dry enough that I can kind of cut in these mountains, because I figure if it's a little bit blurry, that's not a huge deal because those are far in the distance, so it would be fine if they were a little bit blurry. I felt they were a little dark though, so I did blot some of that off just to soften it. And then there's some mountains kind of in front, so I'm making those a little bit darker so they stand out and kind of come forward a little bit. So your more bright colors, your darker colors, sometimes will pull forward if there's a lighter contrasting, more muted color in behind. And then I'm softening the bottom of those mountains so that when I go ahead and put some trees in, I'll be able to let them stand. They'll stand out on top of the mountains, and there won't be like a weird dark line randomly in the middle. So I just kind of fade that color down. So to work on the trees, I am using some hooker's green, and I am tapping it in with my flat wash. That's a 1-inch Majestic flat. I find that pretty much any good quality Golden Taklon brush is great for this. I like those types of flat brushes because they carry plenty of paint and water, but they don't carry so much that it's going to just dump out a bunch on your paper at once. And unlike a faux fur, oh my goodness, there's a bug on my picture. Unlike a faux fur or a real fur brush, it's not going to carry. It's going to come to a nice fine chisel edge, and it's not going to carry too much water so that it dilutes your paint. And I am working wet to wet on the mountain area. The sky has dried up enough that I'm not getting a feathered edge. But I'm letting everything blend kind of in the mountain area because I know I can go over later with more distinct trees if I want to. And I like to get that wet into wet edge. And I like kind of working alla prima or all at once, especially if it's something that I'm going to be painting outside. And painting outside in the summer is one of my favorite things. And I do hope you give that a try too. Just don't try to be perfect, because perfect is not going to happen out in the summer. I'm trying any opportunity I can to make use of this wedge brush. Now this one happens to be the Ruby Satin. It is less absorbent than the best ones, BESTE brand that I had been using, but it's still, it's fun. It just gives me a different texture to work with. I know you may be asking yourself, gee, should I run out and get one of these triangle brushes so I can do this too? You honestly can do this with any round on its tip, or you can use a dagger or a liner. But sometimes if you feel like your work is getting very samey, then just by grabbing a different shape brush that you might not be used to, you can add a little variety to your work. And oftentimes that really gives you a little bit of an excitement that you may be missing, you know, because sometimes you get in your habits of using a brush a certain way, and then and just by grabbing a different type of brush you're not used to just breaks you out of that. So for the barn, I'm using a mixture of cadmium red plus burnt sienna, and just kind of getting a dull red for the barn. I'm using an angle Menta brush. Now these are the new vegan brushes from Royal and Langnickel. I've seen them, you can read about them on the Royal and Langnickel website, but for buying them, the only place I've seen them is in store at AC Moore, but they might have them at Michael's. I'm not sure. We don't have one around here, but hopefully they'll be online soon, like on Amazon and whatnot, so you'll be able to find them. I really like this line of brushes because they're very inexpensive. Like regular price is I think $5, and I don't know about other stores, but AC Moore puts them for $10 sometimes. So they're very affordable. They're cruelty free, and they're good quality, which is it's nice to have all three things there. I made a watery gray for the roof color. I just took some of that same barn color and added a little more blue to it, and put that in the roof. And that was pretty much it. I didn't do a lot of detail on the barn. I'm not a big architecture painter, and I was just kind of in the moment painting here. And then to make my black, I just took some of that red and some of the green together, and it made a really nice dark black. You can always add a little more blue if you need to make it a little darker. And then I'm just kind of putting around with this small cat's tongue brush and dabbing in the black on our black and white cows here. I'm not trying to be super realistic. I'm just trying to get the essence down on the paper. I kind of gave up going for super realistic a long time ago because I didn't spend a lot of time drawing the barns and stuff very accurately. So I mean, your painting's only going to be as good as the drawing you start with, especially if you're doing something like architecture. So I just decided I would catch the impression of the scene, and I would call that good. Now I can put a little more detail on the tree line. I can add some shadows. I could add some foreground trees. Here I'm kind of negative painting around a cluster of trees that are in the front, and trying to help pull out a little bit of depth and texture that way. And now I am mixing up kind of like a purpley color to just enhance the mountains a bit, because I felt like they just were blending into the sky a little too much. So I'm just kind of in the tweaking phase a little bit, and experimenting phase. So I pulled some of that color down into the foreground mountains too, just to make sure they didn't become too prominent. And now I'm using a white gel pen to actually, I'm using a black pen, sorry. I'm using a black pen to kind of define some areas. This is actually a waterproof ink, but you could use any black pen if you're going in at the end. And I just needed to sharpen some stuff up, and I just felt a little too loosey-goosey with this. I felt like it really lacked some definition, probably due to the, you know, really hasty drawing that I started off with. But that's a great thing about pens. You can go in there and you can sharpen things up. It's a really good tool when you're painting out in the field, because you may only have, you know, a few minutes before the light changes and to get that information down, or you might only have time to get a sketch done before you have to leave. And now I'm going in with my trusty white gel pen and just, you know, putting some molding around some of the windows, brightening up some edges that got a little dull, and you know, any bits of the fence that I felt got too washed out, I can go in and put those in with a gel pen. Now I'm just trying to use this gel pen up actually, because it's kind of old and skippy, but it was just enough to add the final details on this painting. Thanks so much for watching Sketchbook Sunday. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please give me a thumbs up before you go, and until next time, happy crafting!